Europeans taking to the streets this week to protest the financial crisis, while Americans take to the streets to protest government spending. Now, someone here says we need to protest even more about how our tax dollars are being spent. Is it time to march on Washington? Well, hello, everyone. I'm Terry Keenan. Welcome to Cashin In. Our Cashin In crew this week, the gang's all here. Wayne Rogers, Jonathan Honig, and Jonas Max Ferris, along with Tracy Burns and John Bradshaw Layfield, who is in Texas for a round of WrestleMania. We're also joined by Democratic strategist Chris Kofinas. Welcome, everybody. Okay, Jonathan, you say we should use a little more decorum than those British protesters, but you say it's time for Americans to voice their outrage.
Yeah, well, Terry, those European protesters are shameful. I mean, these are lawless, mindless hooligans that should be thrown in jail.
They're professional protesters, aren't they, most of them?
Yeah, well, as soon as you throw a rock, you stop being a protester, okay? You start being a hooligan. Americans, however, aren't throwing rocks, Terry. They're raising up their voices. You know, they're having tea parties and rallies and blogging and twittering, and they're scared and pissed about the growing government control. They say the zillions wasted on incompetence, both on Wall Street and Main Street, a growing shift away from capitalism, and they're scared to death. So am I.
Wayne, welcome back. You know, there is a percolating populism out there, and a lot of people are scared to death. Do you think Americans are going to take to the streets to protest?
No, but you know, every time you have one of these G20 conferences, as Jonathan calls them, the crazies come out in the streets. We had it in Seattle. We had it, you know, every time there is one of these, and a lot of this has to do with globalization, and that I have no idea who these people are. I don't know whether they've ever read a book in their lives. You know, it's hard to say.
But should Americans be more outraged?
Yeah, well, I don't know that we should be outraged about this as much as what you said. There are tea parties. Look, if the taxes get to the point where they are so onerous, we will revolt. It's as simple as that. And this is a beginning of a protest. Yes, people will protest, and rightfully so.
Chris, it has happened before. Do you think we're going to see that type of rallying? Do you think that Americans should show their displeasure with the economy right now and get it out?
Well, I think they should be showing their displeasure towards the economic crises that we inherited. But in terms of displeasure towards the Obama administration, I don't see that coming anytime soon, if at all. The reality is, if you look at least almost all the polling data, the American people are very supportive of his agenda, as bold as it is, and because they see it as a necessity. Now, that doesn't diminish the fact that I think there is a real populist anger out there, but I think that populist anger is very targeted towards a lot of these executives and CEOs that a lot of the American people think built the system and were corrupt. And I think that is where the populist anger is focused right now.
Well, anger is anger, Tracy, whether it's at the CEOs or at Congress or the administration.
I don't know. I'm reading different polls. It sounds to me like everyone's mad and they're sick and tired of their dollars being spent haphazardly. I think the way to do this is to not vote these guys in. I mean, let's face it, every move they make between now and the election is all political. Congress. It's all about the next vote because it's coming up soon. So don't vote these guys back. That's the biggest way we can show our protest against this administration.
Jonas, would you like to see some protests on the streets here? It might help consumer confidence.
I'm not against a good protest, Terry, but when they turn into vandals, like Jonathan said, I don't really think they are really protesting anymore. In fact, a lot of these crazy protest groups, or where the World Bank is up, they don't make any sense, nor do I think these protests are making sense. They're throwing rocks through bank windows. Those banks that were nationalized, they were bailed out, sort of like our banks in a weird way. Your depositor money would have been destroyed if the government did not bail out and step in and stop those banks. I mean, people that were protesting here about that, if IndyMac wasn't bailed out, and FDIC wasn't shored up eventually when their money ran out, you would lose your money. Is that what we really want? What are we protesting here? I think there's a lot of baseless anger against the government building, and it is scary. I think there's some it is true that the deficits are growing, we're spending too much money, but a lot of people voted in more spending. Let's not forget that.
No, they did.
And we've had higher taxes through most of this country's history, and we're not going to have protests just because the taxes
They can't go over 100%. Eventually, the taxing is going to have to stop. Wayne, you know, the president has promised that G20 will meet again here in New York in September. So I know you'll take that off your calendar as a week that you're going to be visiting here. But, I mean, are we crazy to have a G20 meeting in the middle of Manhattan?
I don't know. You know, we have a right in this country to protest peacefully. I mean, the right to assemble, it's in our Constitution. These are the things that I think are, it's good. But when you get to the point where you're throwing rocks and shooting people, that's as Jonathan pointed out, hooliganism. You got to stop that. But peaceful protesting is a right, and we should do it when we are outraged.
Let's get JBL in here. You know, we're going to have these tea parties coming up on the 15th all over the country. Do you think that's going to be an outlet for this populist anger?
I think it's going to be an outlet for people being mad at this administration's or policies. I disagree with Chris. I think the support that President Obama has is people in this country support our president. I support our president. He's my president as well. I don't support his policies. He ran on fiscal responsibility. They have taken that $300 billion deficit that George Bush had, and they have put this thing on steroids. That is front pocket change. They ran on the fact no government waste. The vice president has 56 earmarks in this latest package. They ran on taking troops out of Iraq. They're going to leave 50,000 behind, put more in Afghanistan, and just call them by a different name. Somewhere this administration has to get a grip on reality, and spending money like this is crazy.
Chris?
You know, I don't understand why people seem to misunderstand this or don't understand this. The Obama administration did not come into this presidency wanting to spend hundreds of billions of dollars on stimulus and trillions of dollars on bailouts.
But on health care they did, on education, on green energy.
They were forced to do it because of the series of economic crises that they inherited. Now, we could have pretended that we didn't need to do a bailout for all these banks and all of these other financial institutions, and I think we could have gone from a severe recession to depression, and then I imagine folks would have been saying, how dare Obama but now put us in depression? Why didn't he bail out the banks?
Chris, this was all because of a Democratic Congress that Obama was a part of. So he inherited his, I mean, he created his own problems. He was right there in the thick of it, voting these things through. He was right there.
How did President Obama create these problems? That's just not true. That is not factual.
It is.
President Bush was in charge of the country. I remember. He was there for 8 years.
Yeah.
And he was responsible for that.
Yeah, Jonas, you know, the president, President Obama did inherit 7.5% unemployment. He did inherit a system where a lot of the banks are insolvent. I think where people get very angry is the additional trillions for healthcare, education, for green agenda, not necessarily the help for the economy.
He inherited some of the cost, but he's adding more to the cost. I mean, Treasury Secretary was under Republicans. They cooked up a lot of the bank bailout stuff. Anyway, Obama's probably spending more than people thought he would on certain things. He's probably going to focus more on balancing the budget later with tax increases than spending cuts, unfortunately. But that's, you know, it's better than no balance in the budget.
Jonathan, are you going to be out there protesting?
Yeah. Well, you know, absolutely, Terry. And for me, it's not about, you know, whether it's a 25% tax or 27% tax, but the philosophical shift towards collectivism, this notion that I owe my neighbor, I am my neighbor's keeper. So whether it's health, education, a green agenda, you know, whatever the administration wants, the administration.
You mean it's better to have
more than anything else?
You mean it's better to have a society where basically everyone fends for themselves? That we leave 40 million plus people without health care.
Isn't banking collectivist? I mean, a wonderful life. It's like, oh, you get those guys. The whole point of banking is collectivist.
Jonathan, give your quick response.
Chris,
we got to wrap it up.
Healthcare is not a constitutional right. Neither is digital television. I know you want to change Easter.
JBL, you have the last word. I think you.
Television. You do not understand the issue.
All right. That's where we leave it. We're going to wrap it up. We'll see you on the other side. Bailed out and still broke. New reports.